I think London, it's always a bit of a microcosm. I think London probably goes in and out of recessions in many ways in much more quickly than the rest of the rest of the country. I think there's a like all these things and events in particular, we always seem to be last into the recession because people have booked a pipeline of stuff out, then they cancel it, and then once you come out the other side of things, it takes off very quickly afterwards because people are going, well, we've got a market. I think for a while pre-COVID, you ask yourself whether you're part of the problem or are you part of the solution.
Welcome to Southside Stories, the podcast about real London business, hosted by Matt Whittingham.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Southside Stories, the podcast where we talk to London-based founders, owners, entrepreneurs about their business journey. And just a reminder, if you haven't subscribed, please follow us, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. But today I'm joined by Mark from Event Concept. Hello, Mark.
Morning, how are you?
We're great. And you're currently, I think, in the US, and I'm in a reasonably sunny London at the moment. But we're going to talk all about events and that space. And Event Concept is London-born, at least, creative event agency and production company. 3 decades of experience, some amazing creative work that they've produced over the years. Incredible client list as well, Vogue, Dior, many more, and we're going to hear all about that and Mark's journey to where he is right now. And we're going to include in this a little bit about Mark's expansion into the US market as well. So Mark, in your own words, great to have you with us. Tell us a little bit to kick us off. Just tell us about Event Concept. What is it you do? What's your proposition? How are you different from other event companies?
So Event Concepts it's an end-to-end event business now, starting right at the front end from strategy all the way through to the back end with the nuts and bolts of lighting, sound and video, which is our background really. I started as a lighting designer. We moved into technical production because people kept asking us about, could we sort the sound out for them? Could we sort the video out for them? And then people would ask us to provide their sets and stages. And so quietly we moved into the scenic side of things. And as we took more control over the whole look of and feel of the event, we had to get more involved in the overall production management side. And that leads us into where we are now, where we offer a full end-to-end service for clients all around the world.
Great, and we're going to talk about that in some more detail, including some of the clients and some of the work that you've produced. But we're going to rewind the clock a little bit now. We're going to go all the way back and just hear from you how it all started. And we had a chat before this, and I think like a lot of people, you faced a sort of pivotal point where you were made redundant, and often those points in our lives, our working lives, can become a real catalyst for change. Tell us what happened with you, and did that turn out to be a good thing? It sounds like it is with 30 years of experience with Event Concept, but tell us how that experience felt, what opportunities it gave you.
I think at the time it didn't seem like a great thing. Suddenly, the company I was working for suddenly lost a lot of their work because of the Gulf War. And they had to make some very difficult decisions, and that is part and parcel of the working world. But I think you're then forced to go out and think about what it is you do and where else you can apply that. So I think that's quite a good exercise in its own right, to go out and start looking around for other opportunities. So I think that was the first thing. And I went out and initially I went off and worked for somebody else, and they asked me to go and set up a lighting site for them. Which I did, but I think I'm not a great fan of having to work for other people, I think, and so that didn't actually last very long. But I realized that having set something up for somebody else, actually that wasn't that difficult. And so I think the combination of going out and looking for new opportunities and being forced to do things that you're not that comfortable with are the two big lessons that came out of that. And those were the bits that sort of set me up to say, well, okay, well, I've done that. Well, why can't I go and try that? Or why can't I try that? Why can't I try that? Where's that opportunity? So yes, it did seem like a pretty dire position to be in at the time, but actually it taught me an enormous amount about resilience and what's next.
And I think you started out doing freelance work. And did you? How did you develop the business in the early days? Did you have a plan, or was it very much like an organic growth?
Yeah, there was no plan. I think, you go and do a job for somebody as a freelancer. I think I was always ducking and diving. You're looking for an opportunity to make a few more pounds on a job somewhere. And so I would hire out other people's equipment to people I was going to go and work with and just say, look, I'll sort that out for you. Don't worry, I'll sort that out for you. And so for 1 minute, you're just there as the crew, and the next minute you've turned up with a few lights that you've hired in from somebody else and sorted that out. And then after a while, you start to go, well, I've hired those lights a lot. I think I might actually be better off buying those lights. So you buy the lights, and then, of course, you need somewhere to store them. So you quietly have to build you need a warehouse of some sorts, and then you need to pay for the warehouse, so you need more work, and so you end up with an office, and so it goes on. So no, there was no plan at the beginning. Just I need some money to exist on, and the rest of it sort of has quietly grown out of that, I suppose.
You landed an amazing client, I think, in the early years of the Natural History Museum. Is that right?
Yeah, it was an enormously lucky break. Very kindly, an old client of mine and my previous employer had rung them up trying to get hold of me, and either rather foolishly or rather kindly, they actually put him in touch with me, and he rang me and said he wanted to do an event at the museum, and the museum agreed to let me go in and do it. I think they rang my old employer and said, is he competent? And they said, well, he's been running all of our events there for the last year. We can't really say that he's not competent. So they let me in, and we ran the show. It was pretty squeaky. It was quite a big thing to do on my own with no backup and virtually no equipment of my own in the early days. But actually it went really well. So yeah, that was the first Venues London venue that we became preferred suppliers to, and that was, I suppose 30 years ago.
What did it feel like? Was it a mixture of this is a fantastic opportunity mixed with, God, I better not screw this up? What did it feel like when you got that gig?
I think it was pretty terrifying. I think previously I've been protected by my old company, and they'd got all the backup, and it was it was all their name and all the rest of it. All of a sudden, this was not an insubstantial show to do on the first off, and of course I wanted to make it amazing, so I completely oversold it probably, it was pretty frightening.
As you started to scale the business, there's often a point in time where you might have been, especially in maybe cyclical businesses or businesses where there's a sudden high demand for services, but then maybe it slacks off later. And there's often a tension between hiring freelancers and contractors and external people versus bringing it all in-house. And I think you went through that same thought process, didn't you? And tell us a little bit about that, and how did you evaluate what was the right direction for you?
We were using, 5 or 6 different technical suppliers at the time, lighting suppliers and video suppliers. Some of them on the same preferred supplier roster that we were on with the museums, and some of them not, for doing stuff outside of the venues. And I think the big bit was I looked down at the end of the year and we looked at how much we'd spent with these companies, and that was not an insubstantial amount. So that the financial side is a big part of it, and particularly when you're effectively doing the same thing as the same sound system that you're hiring in over and over and over again into exactly the same space. We just thought, well, it would be better off if we learned to do this ourselves. So that was a big driver, and the real driver came, I suppose, when one day we lost a show. We lost a whole show on the back of a sound installation that had gone in that had just gone really badly. And we didn't just lose the sound side of it. We lost the whole show, and we lost that show for, it was a repeating show. So we lost that for 3 years, and they had one or two other things that we were doing for them at the same time. And that was a bit of a wake up call. And you do the forward maths on what that show was worth over 3 years and what those multiple shows were over 3 years. And you go, well, that hasn't just cost me this, it's cost me 6 times that. And I just felt we wanted more control over the delivery and over the systems. It meant there's one less markup involved in the whole journey for the end client as well. So there were a whole number of factors in there that made it better for both our clients, now only managing one supplier, all the way through to our own supply chain, which meant we weren't permanently going outside of the business to get people to do things for us.
Yeah. Okay. So minimizing sort of the risk. There's obviously a financial piece there as well. I guess there's less point of failure, isn't there? If you have got without that dependency on external contractors and all the things that might affect them, as you say, you've got more control over your complete end-to-end production.
Exactly,
there.
And all the timings, everything's run through our control, our own control system, so that all the departments hopefully are all speaking to each other, and there's no failure point in that communications outside of the organisation as well. That's how it's worked, and it seems to work well for us. And the museums were a bit skeptical early on that we could actually do it all, but I think that we were the first company to go in and do that in these spaces, and I think it was sort of proved to them that actually it was a good model for them.
Now, a slightly different question, which is you married a partner who has a floristry business, I think.
She does.
And great. And you merged that into the event side. Tell us about that, because it doesn't sound like immediately an obvious sort of fit, but just tell us about that.
Well, they're an event florist, so we work in the same spaces. Right. We run the same contracts. So and we met years ago running the premiere for the Evita film, and we did a lot of work there. And it's a great company, Viva's Carter Flowers, and they do some amazing stuff at Chelsea and in lots of the same venues that we work at. I think that I think you asked about, well, what are the rules? And I think that the number one rule is don't work with your partner, isn't it? I think is what everybody says. But
yeah,
I think when we first moved into our business in Bermondsey, the office is sort of long and thin, and my office was at one end and hers was at the other end. So that sort of gave us a certain amount of time apart, even in the office. But I think the two big rules are, don't take all the stuff from work and take it home and talk about it, which of course is virtually impossible because that's what you do. And then don't bring your petty squabbles about who hasn't put the dustbins out into the office at the other end, because that's not great. That's not great for everybody who's around you as well. So neither of which, of course, ever happen. But we love working together. Some of the big sort of shows that we ran together. I'd be doing the overall design, and Ming would come in and basically sprinkle magic dust all over my events and transform them. So we always loved doing that together. So I thoroughly recommend it. That's great. It must be quite a great feeling, isn't it, when you've designed an event space, put on a big production, you've got all these wonderful aspects and flowers and floristry that Ming is doing, and it's something you've created together. Did you ever get that feeling when you stand back from it together and God, we've created something really amazing here together? Yeah, it's really cool. And even recently, we did a lot of work at Chelsea recently, and Ming's done all the flowers, and we've built all the scenery side of things. And again, we just, we don't. The pair of us don't do it very often, but every now and then we'll sit back and go, yeah, all right, this is really cool. And seeing what the team are doing now, they are building some amazing things. So I think that that's much more important now that yeah, we love doing that, but what we love seeing now is the scale of what everybody at Event Concept and Ivory and Beavis Carter are all doing. It's sort of, it's off the charts cool, and complicated and design heavy and experience heavy, and it's really cool to see that more than anything else.
Yeah, and actually on the show notes for this, we'll put some links to, we're going to cover Ivory in a second, but we'll put some web links on here so people can actually see the amazing work that you've been doing. It's really impressive. Crisis point, 2008, you committed to 30,000 square feet of new space. I think you paid for that out of your own cash. And then, of course, 2008, what happens? Big financial crisis. Tell us about that, because that could have been a really kind of survival mode moment. Tell us about that. What got you through it?
Yeah, it was absolutely, you're right. It was completely a survival moment. Ming and I had gone off on holiday end of July, I think, and with a really solid looking order book for the back end of the year. And as August progressed and Lehman's and everything else started to unfurl, we could see that the order book wasn't quite as solid as we'd planned. And as you said, we'd moved into this new warehouse and fitted it out, and that fit out alone, as these things inevitably do, it cost us way more than we thought, and we hadn't borrowed to do it. So suddenly we had no cash and a somewhat squeaky looking order book, and it sort of looked bad in between September and December, and then of course people's yearly budgets, those were the December year ends, started to sort of launch their budgets for the year after. When we suddenly realized it wasn't bad, it was sort of twice as bad as we thought it was going to be. And in fact, I think sales had dropped 35% or something. And we committed to this big new building that needed probably sales to be plus 120, and it was now minus 35. So we had quite a big hole in our books. I had a very good finance director at the time. He was really all over the cash flow side of things. And I think in the sort of chaos that was going on at the time, and nobody had any money anywhere, we just sort of kept under the radar. And some of the moves we'd made into sound and video meant that we could actually do things relatively cheaply now, because we were no longer outsourcing that. We were lucky that our scenic lease had come to an end, so we managed to bring all of that into the same building. So that we saved some costs there, and we had to make some pretty brutal decisions about the team at the time, which was also deeply unpleasant. So there were a number of things there, and we had, I think September 2009 was about our lowest point, and the banks said they weren't going to support us, and out of the blue, for which I should be eternally grateful, EY, one of our sort of long-lasting clients, paid us 3 weeks early for a big show in September, and we made the September payroll, and that was that. So yeah, a mix of enormous good luck and just timing and all sorts of other things, because a lot would have depended on where our year end fell and all sorts of things like that would have made a difference between survival and collapse.
What did it feel like for you personally, Mark, when you were doing that? Are you a pretty resilient person? That must have been a huge amount of stress in your life at that point.
Yeah, I'm moderately resilient on occasions, but yeah, it was pretty stressful. It was pretty stressful. I think because the way that the whole thing, the whole cash thing in the UK played out, this is not something that goes away overnight. And the fact that no company anywhere seemed to have any money whatsoever, was pretty difficult, and that went on for months and months and months. So even if you owed money, your suppliers couldn't pay you, and your clients couldn't pay you, and so it sort of went round in circles. There was sort of vicious cycle of no cash anywhere, which all took a long time to pan out. But we got there.
Well, let's fast forward and bring us up to date now. And as you described, you moved from some of the back end technical side to full end to end delivery, design all the way through to production. Tell us about a project or two that you think really typifies the best work, your best work that you're most proud of.
I think there's two sides of that. I think the Union Venues of London is a big part of our life. We've been on those preferred rosters for 30 years. Some of the big shows that we do in some of those big venues, when we've got access at 6 o'clock in the evening, guests arriving at 8 o'clock, and we're doing lighting, sound, videos, scenic, and the overall, the overall technical production of the whole show, what the team do in those short periods of time, always amazes me. It's complicated, it's difficult, it's very stressful. And there is no, you can't start the show at 9 o'clock. That's just it's not a thing. So you have to deliver. And I think that's amazing. But at a sort of bigger scale, we've been running some very big global conferences. We were in Brazil for COP earlier on in the year, running the biggest thing that we've ever produced. We've been in Madrid this year. We've been all over the world doing stuff, and on a scale that we've never done in the past. And seeing some of that is really, really exciting, and the scale of it and the complexity and the engagement that it brings to the people who attend these things. That's really exciting to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, there's, some of the production capabilities now is sort of incredible. You must have seen a lot of change over 30 years. And I guess now with, technology and lighting design and LEDs and displays, and what sort of capability, how is it running and producing an event different now to what it was 30 years ago?
I just think it's way more complicated. There's so much more complexity. People want more complicated things. They want more complicated content. They want more complicated shows. I think the technology that has moved on, so far, and the problem is that the further it moves, the more people want the new toys, the new gimmicks, that they want things that they've never seen before. So you're always having to innovate, and it's not, it's not one person on a small lighting desk flashing a few lights on and off anymore. There are big shows with lots of complicated cues. And it's a big drama, and you're almost creating a theatrical show, but it's got to be put together in a day or an hour or a week, rather than building it out over over months on end. So I think that's a permanent driver, is staying ahead of the technology and making sure that you've got the people in place who understand the technology, and who can make it happen for you. Well, I think venues I think events in general are a much bigger part of the marketing game as well. And I think that becomes more and more crucial in the world we're in at the moment, and people want to experience things. Companies, in many ways, an event is the human side of a business now. It is the one opportunity they have to say, look, this is what we're all about. This is the sort of people we are. This is the sort of thing we want to do. This is how we want to behave. And these are our values, and that's really important to people. So I think that's a big change in the way events have been perceived as well.
Yeah. Because it seemed for a while after COVID, where Zoom came in and there was international travel was less, that the events industry went through quite a difficult time then. But it seems to have come back very, very strongly, I guess, for many of the reasons you just talked about there.
Yeah, I think somebody said to me the other day, we've won that argument, that people sat at home and thought that they could do it all online. And the answer is you can't. And people are people. They want to get out and meet, and they want to, they want to engage with people, and they want to do things and see things and experience things. And that is really powerful. And, everyone said, oh, it'll never be the same again. It'll all be online and no one's going to go anywhere or do anything. And the answer is that is absolutely not what is going on in the world. And I think you can get so much from an event, from one photograph. And I think people are seeing the power now of a carefully crafted photograph or carefully crafted piece of content, and how powerful that is when that is then magnified by 5,000 telephones, 10,000 telephones, 20,000 telephones, a million telephones. And nobody's watching television anymore. So in many ways, the power now to bring that into a handset and go, okay, look where I am, look what I'm doing, look what these guys are trying to do, trying to achieve, trying to sell. All of that is just going out through that little piece of technology we've all got sat in our hands. So it makes events a very, very powerful tool.
Yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't really thought about that, but that the amplification and projection of a brand experience amplified all the way through social platforms like TikTok. It makes for great content, and I guess it really builds on, if a brand is looking at ROI and impact, that aspect has made events perhaps more appealing than they were 10, 15 years ago.
I think so. It's because it's no longer all about there's a lot of celebratory stuff that still goes on out there, but so much more is about, the other side of things is about the marketing mix that we're involved with.
Great. Well, let's look at the US now. Of course, big market, and I think you opened a US office in January last year, and then 3 months ago you acquired a company called Ivory Worldwide. Tell us a little bit about Ivory, but very interested to know why acquire rather than organically looking to grow in the US.
There's a number of reasons. As I sort of talked about, we've come from the back end. We've come from a nuts and bolts end, and we worked upstream through that. Ivory very much a strategy and creative agency at the front end. So they look at the events world in a slightly different light to the way that we look at it. So that's a really cool combination for us. They've got great design. We've got great design, but they do things in a slightly different way. They've got a different client base to us. They've got offices in Houston, as well as a New York office, and we've got an office in New York. So they're not, and they've also got a great understanding of global delivery as well, working in different parts of the world to some of the stuff that we've done. So there's a capability there and understanding about slightly different global markets that works for both of us. So that was those are the two key areas, and it just has given us some scale in the US, which we've opened and has been really busy last year. So it just gives us a bigger team in a quicker way out there, which we needed to deal with. So that's all really exciting. And the other side of things is Ivory use technical suppliers. So obviously the sort of the third key point on all that is that we can actually help them out with European and UK technical production out of our Bermondsey office. So there's a number of sort of key strategic reasons why we decided that would be good to, and it was Robbie and I just sort of met up and with chewing the fat one day and went this might be interesting, and one thing led to another, and yes, it's really interesting, and I think we've got a pretty exciting year lined up with them moving forward. So no, it's all really cool.
And I mean, sometimes these acquisitions and mergers, they, on paper they look great, and there's logic and business opportunity and all the rest of it. How's the reality of it? How's it been for you now that you're a couple of months into that?
We are in very early days, and very much they're running their own game, and we hope that will continue for some time, and so I think it's slowly. We've got so much to learn from them. They've got a lot to learn from us. I think we will just take our time over it, and do the best we need to do, and make the tweaks as we go along, and see what our combined learning, how that improves the end. It's all about offering our clients a better service globally, and I think that's the way we will look at it, and just provide the best offering we possibly can across both sides of the business.
Let's switch to leadership, Mark. So, long journey, 30 years in, just made an acquisition, lots of things going on, managing this very full roster of production. And I think you told me previously that you're doing something like 30 events a week, which I just find staggering. And I remember as on the client side at Microsoft and Vodafone doing some events there, and just the level of stress and having to worry about all of these things doing in one event was incredible. I have so much admiration for people that do events. I don't know how they pull them off like that. To do 30 a week to me is just mind-boggling. But with all that going on, how do you structure your working week? How do you focus on strategy and where you want to take the company next versus all the operational stuff that comes with all of those amazing clients and that level of production?
I mean, I very much, I've taken myself out of the day-to-day completely. Got a very talented managing director, Adam Stanley, who's running the show on a day-to-day basis, and along with some very cool members of the leadership team who done absolutely incredible things. And I think that separation of almost of ownership and day-to-day business running has been sort of life-changing for me, because when you're in it, every problem on a day-to-day basis seems like the end of the company almost, and so that becomes a bit wearing after a while. So I think it's been amazing to watch these guys doing what they're doing, and growing the business and driving it forward, and it just gives me some time to really think about some of the bigger issues in the organization, and what's next, and to work with them to come up with a plan that says, well, how are we going to get from here to here? And in many ways, I suppose just being able to just help them just say, well, is that a good idea or a bad idea, or why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Rather than going, do that, is also is a much better place for me, I suppose. So I've really enjoyed moving myself out of that role on a day-to-day basis.
It's got often a tension, I think, with founders and the people that started a business, who love what they do, but to grow the business, there may be aspects of the role they really enjoy, sometimes to the detriment of other parts of the business. And then you've got businesses that, to exit, need to have less owner or founder dependency. This is a bit of a tough generalized question, I guess, in a way, but is there any advice you would give to somebody who might be in that position? At what point do you think it makes sense, or what questions as a founder should you ask yourself at the point where you might, as the founder and operator, be holding the business back, and to make that leap into seizing control of some areas of the business, perhaps to a professional MD type role? Anything that you've learned or reflect on when you did that?
I think for a while, pre-COVID, I'd been. You ask yourself whether you're part of the problem or are you part of the solution. And my skill set has always been, I suppose, in big picture, what's next, rather than in nuts and bolts and detail and making sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And I think that's as a business grows, you've really got to recognize that actually it's really important that you've got the right people making sure that all those things are happening, because compliance and health and safety and just, operational excellence and all that sort of stuff doesn't work if you're a bit of an airhead like I am. So you've got to make sure you've got people who really understand and are really good at that level of detail and professionalize the organization, because it will blow up if you don't. It's difficult enough as it is, with really good leadership in place. So yeah, I think understanding when you're part of the problem is key, I suppose. And if you're beginning to think, are you part of the problem? You probably are part of the problem.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, recognizing, I mean, that requires a degree of sort of self-awareness and self-reflection. But yeah, are you part of the problem? Know your strengths. Where might the opportunity be for the company if you had somebody that came in and do the things that perhaps you're less good at, and finding the right people. Let's take us back to London.
Yep.
You've been in Bermondsey. How long have you been based in Bermondsey?
I think we've been there nearly 20 years now, I think. We were in Battersea before that, so I've always been a South London person, I think, since I was about 20, I think. I first moved, I was in Fulham when I first came to London, and then rapidly decided that rent was cheaper south of the river, so moved south, and so yeah, I've been here ever since.
Yeah, Bermondsey seems to be a thriving area, certainly in the last sort of 10 years for creative businesses. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on sort of London and perhaps the UK more broadly. Businesses that I speak to cite things like national insurance increases and employment rights bill and so on as constraint on growth. And of course, we had Brexit as well. And sometimes it's a somewhat depressive, not depressing, but, there is a kind of flat line, I guess, of business confidence that goes with where the economy is right now. But on the other hand, I was talking to somebody this morning who is in property in the city and works on commercial space in the city. He was saying to me that occupancy in City of London office space is something like 95%. It's virtually full there. So there are sort of two angles often to London and the economy. What are your thoughts there and running a business in the UK?
I think London, it's always a bit of a microcosm. I think London probably goes in and out of recessions in many ways in much more quickly than the rest of the rest of the country. I think there's a like all these things and events in particular, we always seem to be last into the recession because people have booked a pipeline of stuff out, then they cancel it, and then once you come out the other side of things, it takes off very quickly afterwards because people are going, well, we've got a market. So we get particularly deep V's. I think London gets quite deep V's from a recession point of view. We've certainly had a very busy 3 years. I mean, enormously busy. But again, we have actively gone out and to grow the business and seek global work as well. So I think that has helped us enormously. I think, yes, there's a lot of uncertainty in what's going to be inflicted on business next. I think it's difficult. We make plans around budgets and all this, that sort of side of things. And then, yes, along comes an NI cost that we didn't have last year. And we don't know what the costs of the new employment laws are going to be yet. So that's all a big unknown. But all we can do is deal with these things as they come at us. And I guess that's what we're all good at, is going, well, that's a problem. How are we going to deal with that now? What do we need to do to our cost base, and how do we move around that? Because the alternative is if you don't put your prices up, or if you don't make the cost count necessary, then you don't make any money, and then you're no longer a business. And if you don't make any money, you don't pay any tax. So there's a sort of cyclicality of all of that goes, well, what do you want? You can take it from here, but you're not going to get it here, or however that works. And I think business has to juggle all of that constantly. So every time these things change, that's one more person you've got to get in to look at how that's going to change. That's more tax advice. That's more accounting advice. There's a lot of advice that comes with that, and none of that is cheap. And so these things end up costing businesses money. And I think, again, a lot depends on what scale your business is at the time as to whether or not you can afford that. So people get caught because they can't afford whatever that change is, because their business isn't quite ready to do that, or the competition's too strong, or whatever. So there's a shakeout that comes with all of that inevitably. But I just think sometimes it's very difficult for people to react fast enough to some of these changes. And like everybody says, all business really wants is stability and understanding that it's going to be like this in a year's time, or that I'm making these plans around doing this. It's like pensions. Well, I'm making a plan because that's the law today that says that's what's going to do. If you change all the laws when, just as I'm getting to retire, I might have done something different 20 years ago if I'd known that was what was going to come and be the case now. So I think it's tricky, but I also understand that COVID was very, very expensive for everybody. The government put a lot of money into companies' pockets to keep them afloat. So none of that is easy. And we managed to get backing for an event business in the middle of COVID. Well, thank you, NatWest. What crazy bank would offer money to an event business in the middle of COVID? What they did, they stepped up and said, "Here you go." And we should be eternally grateful for that as well. So I get it, and the government's got to deal with the upshot of all of that. So it is what it is, and there's not much point in griping about it. We have to get on and make the company grow, make the country grow, and get growth for everybody, because that's the only way actually that creating money to run through the economy is the only way that any of us are going to get ourselves into a better place. Yeah,
great point. And last question sort of chimes in with that last bit, which is looking ahead, year ahead. Where do you want to take the company in the next year? What would you love to have achieved in the next 12 months in the business, whether that was with Ivory in the US or elsewhere? What's your ambition for the year?
I think if we want to grow, we want to continue to grow. And I think we want to particularly grow our US offering. I think we want to solidify what we're doing with Ivory and ourselves on what that offering looks like. I think, we've got some ambitious plans. And I think, much of that will be rolled out over the next year. So some of that, I'm not going to roll out now because, we haven't finalized some of the thinking, but, I think we more of the same. We just want to look after our clients. We've got amazing clients who come back to us year after year after year. So it's not about, the plans are how do we look after them? How do we make sure that their events are the most spectacular, that they get good value for money, that they get great service, that we haven't gone down some crazy AI route that says no one's going to pick the phones up anymore. It's you're not going to get any service out of this. We've got to understand what it is they want and how we can best look after them, and everything we do is around what's best for them. What is it that they want? What do they want us to do? And that's where we look for growth. What's our what's our service offering? Is it the right one for the market at the moment? Are we doing what people want us to do? And to me, that's the most important thing, because if we're trying to sell ice creams and actually what they want is licorice all sorts, then we're in the wrong place.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point to wrap up on, Mark. So yeah, great point about reminding us, understanding customers, where are they at, what value do they want, how can we give them more value. It's great to see your company in the event space really doing well. The Ivory acquisition sounds really exciting. So best of luck for the next year, Mark, and thank you for your time with us today.
Thank you very much. It's been good fun.